Will the hall please come to order? There is a quorum present. Welcome residents and taxpayers, town officials, town meeting members, and interested parties to the third session of 2024 Spring Annual Special Town Meeting number 1. 2024 Spring Annual Town Meeting is running concurrently as adjourned at this time. Is there anyone who has just recently been elected or appointed to town meeting who has not taken the oath of office here that needs to do so? Please rise. After I say the word "I," state your name, and then repeat the words that I state thereafter. I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as a town meeting member, according to the Natick Home Rule Charter and bylaws of the town, laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the Constitution of the United States. Congratulations. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? In a moment of silence, particularly with those in mind serving around the world on our behalf. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The meeting is assembled as follows. To my right, Diane Packer, interim town clerk. To my immediate left is Cody Jacobs, finance committee secretary. Seated next to Cody is Todd Gillenwater, finance committee chair. And next to Todd is Karis North, town council, down in the well. Furthest from me is Catherine Coughlin, chair of the select board. Seated next to Catherine is Jamie Erickson, town administrator. Please remember that clear liquid is permitted in the auditorium. No other liquid or any food is permitted in the hall. Could you also check your cell phones and iPads to make certain that they are on mute, or even better, shut them off. And you all should have a device, which at this time we're going to do a test vote. What? Yeah, close it out. I need to see this. Oh, that's good. That's good. Thanks. Do you approve of the Patriots' first round draft pick, Drake May? If you do, you can make a lot of money picking sports players. Patriots. It's open for voting. Excuse me? No, it's not. We'll send it to Mr. Kraft. How's that? Voting is closed. Still got more coming in? There's a lot of smart people. 43 yes, 10 no, 58 abstain. I like that. Very wise. We will send that to Robert Kraft. So let's go through scroll through so that we could, yes, please, so everybody can check their voting device. We all good? Next order of business. Let me get it up here. Nope. I do have to propose a motion, and that is move to waive reading the text of all 2024 special town meeting number 1 warrant articles, and move to waive reading the text of motions excluding amounts to be appropriated and sources of said amounts to be appropriated when motions are provided in the text of the recommendations of the Natick Finance Committee publications. Moved by Mr. Gath, seconded by Mr. Awkward. We'll vote on this. Majority vote. Please vote on the matter at this time. You all set? Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 113 yes, 3 no, 0 abstain. Passes by majority vote. As you're well aware, we're in the special town meeting number 1. The information in your book begins on page 189, and I believe we're going to be working exclusively through that with maybe one slight suggested vote, a procedural motion. We'll get to that in a bit. Everybody there? Ready? Good. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have recommendation under Article 1 in special town meeting number 1.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 1, Motion A, as printed on page 190 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Motion as it appears on the top of page 190 of your Finance Committee recommendation book. Anybody want to debate whether we're going to hear a report or not? Seeing none, we'll vote this at this time. This is motion A. Please vote at this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 109 yes, 3 no, 2 abstain. Matter passes by a majority vote. To give the report, Member Weithman. The report, will it take more than 5 minutes?
No,
Okay. And you did have some slides,
not for this section.
not for this section, very good. Please proceed.
Christine Weithman, Precinct 5, Secretary of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. Thank you, town meeting, for your time this evening. Our written report was forwarded to you by the town moderator on April 25th. There are a few printed copies up here on the stage for those who may not have received the email. For new town meeting members, hopefully you've had a chance to read our 2 reports as they detail our work over the past 16 months. A very brief summary of our committee progress to date. The Charter and Bylaw Review Committee was created at Fall Annual Town Meeting 2022 to perform the required 5-year review of the Charter and Bylaws. In January of 23, the committee convened and began reviewing the Charter for potential improvements, and our report was presented to Spring Town Meeting in 2023. In addition, at that time, Town Meeting provided the committee with funds to support the committee's use of special counsel in an appropriation of $50,000. In July of 2023, the committee hired our special counsel, but during that interview process, we actually received free legal advice from the 3 firms that we interviewed, and they all suggested that the committee consider a special legislative act to make all of our charter changes. A special legislative act is a state law, and some of the charter changes we propose are required by such a state law. And using this method to update our charter, it allows full integration and symmetry with all the charter changes we are proposing. It's also important to note that even though we are proposing to change the charter with a state law, the more typical method Natick uses to update the charter, such as a warrant article and then a subsequent vote of the electorate, is still available to town meeting in the future to change matters within the charter that are not required to be managed by a special act. In last fall annual town meeting, the committee presented charter warrant articles and motions to create the special act and amend the current charter. The main motion and 8 amendments passed fall annual town meeting, and the remaining amendments were referred back to the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. From November to present, the CBRC worked with the public and the Select Board to agree on language to complete the Special Legislative Act package and present new motions, which we'll discuss in Article 2. All motions before town meeting were vetted by both our special counsel and town council. When we discuss Article 2, I'll speak to the individual motions and describe what is the same and what is different from the fall motions we had proposed. The legislative act has not been filed and ideally will be filed by the end of the current calendar year. In terms of overall timing, the legislature would review and act on the law in 2025. Once signed by the governor, the act could then be voted by the electorate in either a special election called in 2025, if that was the case, or potentially be on the ballot in the 2026 election. The question before the voters is whether to accept the charter changes, and it's a straight up or down, yes or no vote. The CBC is scheduled to work. Our term is through fall 2024 town meeting. Our remaining committee work is to review the bylaws, which are very extensive. The committee is seeking additional appropriation from free cash to support the work of special counsel during our bylaw review process. And we can speak more to that when we talk about motion B of Article 1. The CBC appreciates the support of town administration, who provided us with a Zoom account so that we could provide public access to our meetings remotely. All our meetings were available on Pegasus On Demand, and also recorded on Pegasus. Thank you.
Next order of business, or there's further business under Article 1. That is a motion B to Mr. Jacobs. Does the Finance Committee have recommendation under motion B?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action on Article 1, Motion B, as printed on page 190 of the Finance Committee recommendation book in the amount of $75,000 from free cash, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as it appears on page 190. Mr. Ostroff, for what purpose do you seek the floor? Down front here.
Josh Ostroff, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, I have a procedural motion to postpone consideration of Article 1, Motion B, to the end of the warrant. That is the special town meeting warrant.
Mr. Coffey? You have 2 minutes to speak to it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I offer this motion so that town meeting members, in considering the request for an appropriation, will have the benefit of seeing how much progress we make on the special town meeting articles and be more informed as to what our further resources may be needed to cast a more informed vote on the request for an appropriation. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Very good. The motion that will be debated at this time is to postpone consideration of Article 1, Motion B, until the end of the warrant. Mr. Linehan? Please remember, our bylaw says 2-minute time to speak.
Thank you. Mike Linehan, Precinct 6. Question to you, sir. The end of the warrant means the end of special town meeting or the end of all of the town meetings, including the annual town meeting?
The only warrant that we're acting on right now is the special town meeting. So therefore, it's the end of the warrant after Article 2.
Thank you.
Very good. Member Collins, the rear of the hall.
Thank you. Kathy Collins, Precinct 9. I rise to oppose the procedural motion. The Finance Committee obviously had sufficient information. We've been presented with everything in our book, and I see no reason for taking things out of order at this time. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion to postpone consideration of Article 1, Motion B. Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dirk Coburn, Precinct 4, and member of the Finance Committee. In testimony before the Finance Committee, the resources were related to portions of the job of a Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, specifically related to the bylaws that have not been addressed yet. They're not proposed on tonight's agenda. And to complete the full review mandated on a Charter and Bylaw review cycle, they do need to be addressed. I see no reason to complicate things by taking this out of order, and I will vote no on the procedural motion.
Thank you, sir. In the rear of the hall, Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, David Coffey, Precinct 2. I would ask for favorable action on this motion. I don't see anything wrong in letting all of the members hear what it is they're buying before they buy it. There's no grave danger that's going to occur if we vote on this now or at the end, but while the Finance Committee has had a whole hearing, why not let everybody here in town meeting extend them the courtesy of hearing it, everything that's being done, and then let them decide what they want to pay for. Thank you.
Member Foss.
Charlene Foss, Precinct 10. I rise to oppose this because the money is needed. Whatever we do this coming evening, they're going to need the money because it supports the Bylaw Review Committee. And I think this is ridiculous and not worth our time to be wasting, because we're going to vote it. Let's vote it now.
Further debate under the postponement, motion to postpone? Seeing none, we'll vote this at this time. Please vote at this time. Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is 51 yes, 68 no, 2 abstain. The motion to postpone consideration fails. We do have the motion B on the floor at this time. To speak to the matter, you need more than 5 minutes?
No.
Member Whiteman, thank you. You have the floor.
Not likely to use the slide either.
I'm sorry?
I had sent you a slide. I won't be using that slide.
You do have a slide
No,
on?
yeah, we won't be using it.
Okay.
Okay. So again, Christine Weithman, Precinct 5. CBRC respects the town's financial condition and takes seriously our request of $75,000. It's higher than our first request. This is not an estimate of what we plan to spend on legal support. The committee will be pleased to return unused funds to the town. what we're really unsure of is what the time commitment is going to be for our bylaw review. And we had to go back to the Finance Committee in January for a reserve fund transfer. The work that was done with the charter over the course of the summer and into fall town meeting was extensive and required lots of legal time. And so we did require additional transfer, a Finance Committee transfer, a Finance Committee reserve fund transfer of an additional $25,000. And that's what's allowed us to continue to do the work, working with special counsel on all the motions that we'll discuss in Article 2. We did hear from Finance Committee that they don't want us to come back for additional funds. And so we feel that we know that we're going to need a certain amount of money based on the averages per month. You know, we're typically in non-meeting months, we're using about $5,000 worth of legal resources. But during months when special counsel would attend our meetings, Finance Committee or town meeting this evening, the bills are higher. In addition, for the bylaw review, the bylaws need to be reviewed against Mass General Law and current statute, just to make sure and identify any bylaws that must be updated. And that can be an initial lengthy review process. Again, we're not quite sure what those costs are going to be, but once we know which bylaws we need to deal with, then we'll need to be writing motions and working through that, you know, close to the time of fall town meeting. So again, we're going to have the same type of work where we would propose motions, and then special counsel will help us with refining those motions, which ultimately also go back to town council. So it's our expectation that, you know, we need additional funds. We're unsure of the full amount of those funds. We do not want to go back to the Finance Committee for an additional reserve fund transfer, and we'll be pleased to return all unused funds to the town. And again, this money would be available for us starting in the fiscal year. So, you know, we have some money left over from the current reserve fund transfer, but, you know, most of this will be for starting July 1st. Thank you.
Motion that's before you is motion B, that is for the sum of $75,000 from free cash. To speak to the matter, Member Sullivan? Is that you? Yep.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, a question. If I interpreted correctly what was just said by the previous speaker, in addition to the funds being allocated to do this work, there will also be additional work that needs to be done by town council reviewing the work that special town council will be doing. Is that an accurate summation of what was just said?
Someone want to speak to that? To the member's question? Mr. Griesmer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. To answer the question, Town Council reviews all of the motions that come before town meeting, but Town Council does not, at least with the work that was done for the charter matters that will be before you, was not involved in the advice and the consultation and the initial drafting of those, but was involved in the very final review before they went in front of the Finance Committee and before they went in front of town meeting, the same way that Town Council reviews all motions before they hit town meeting floor.
Second question, based on any work that Town Council has done reviewing or looking at the work that has been done by the special town council, do we have any estimation as to what's been expended by the town for that work in the past and what potentially may be incurred in cost in the future?
Ms. North, can you speak to what has occurred in the past?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
My work preparing for attending town meeting is all part of the retainer agreement with the town. It is not billed out at an hourly rate, so it is part of the package of services that we provide on an annual basis to the town, so there's no additional cost.
Thank you, that's all I had.
That helped? Very good. Further debate on motion B, as it is before you? Seeing none, we'll vote that at this time. Voting is closed. It is. Tally of the vote is 94 yes, 19 no, 7 abstain. Passes by a majority vote. Next order of business is Article 2. Again, this is Charter and Bylaw Review. Questions? Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on, I think it's motion 1?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 1, as printed on page 200 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as it appears on page 200 of the Finance Committee recommendation book. To speak to the matter, Member Weithman.
Thank you. I have 3 slides for this motion.
I'm sorry?
3 slides for this motion, motion 1.
On motion 1?
Yes.
Do you have that, John? Thank you.
So town meeting, motion 1 is to look to revise the question that the town would pose to the voters to include all the actions taken at this 2024 special town meeting number 1. So here on the first slide, this is the start of the special act. And on the next slide, this is how the question appeared based on fall 2023 annual town meeting. You can just see in the italics that it just reflects the question currently in the legislative act reflects the work that was done in fall 2023 annual town meeting. And then the final slide. What we're looking to do in this motion is to amend the question. And you can see that in the red text here, that we're looking to expand the question to the voters that would include the actions of fall 2023 town meeting and then special town meeting number 1 in 2024. So all the subsequent work that we're doing to amend the charter would be included in the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you. Matter is to the floor. Debate on the question. Member Ostrov.
Josh Ostrov, Precinct 6. Through you, Mr. Moderator, should a subsequent town meeting make further amendments, that would be, then we would then revise this language at that time. Conjectural, of course. And I guess that's a question.
Hypothetically, yes.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Further debate? Member Linehan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Leddy, Precinct 6, in debate. As the Finance Committee clerk mentioned, motion 1 was by a unanimous vote of Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is a pretty diverse group. There are some very intense who don't like the idea of changing the charter or bylaw because they don't want us to be a town anymore. But when the Finance Committee, I would seriously encourage people in town meeting, when the Finance Committee, given the diversity of people on the Finance Committee, the diversity of viewpoints, when they vote something unanimously, it's probably a pretty good idea. Thank you.
Further debate on the question before you? Seeing none. We'll vote this at this time. That is motion 1 under Article 2, found on page 200. Please vote at this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 112 yes, 6 no, 4 abstain. Matter passes by a majority vote. Next order of business is motion 2. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation under motion 2?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 2, as printed on page 201 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second. Did you second that, Mr.? It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Motion 2, as it appears on page 201 of the Finance Committee recommendation book. To speak to the matter, Member Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christine Weithman, Precinct 5. Motion 2 is a motion to create the position of Deputy Moderator. This is the same, essentially the same motion as formerly Amendment I. I do also have a slide for this. In the charter, originally, the town clerk would step in and temporarily assist town meeting if the moderator needed to recuse or was temporarily unavailable. When the town changed the charter and voted to change the town clerk from elected to appointed, we removed language in the charter such that the town clerk would assist with town meeting management. So currently in our charter, if the moderator is unavailable, we don't have anybody to run town meeting, and town meeting would have to vote to elect a moderator. So what we're looking to do with this change to the charter is create a position of deputy moderator that would be appointed by the moderator. And what's really important is, and so there's language in this particular motion that's a little bit different than the fall, in that the word temporary is added twice to the motion. So the final language of the charter would indicate that the deputy moderator is to preside temporarily over town meeting, and that it's in the temporary absence of the moderator. So this is not to replace the moderator if the moderator position became vacant. This is to assist the moderator in planning for town meeting. There's quite a bit of planning that goes on in town meeting, and I discussed that in our report. And what we're looking to do is to have town meeting be efficient by having someone who can assist the moderator in the planning process. So if, let's say, the moderator had a town meeting warrant article and had to recuse, the temporary moderator would then step in and understand all the issues related to that warrant article and would run town meeting efficiently. So again, this is somebody that can assist the moderator in the duties. We also had discussion at Finance Committee, and Town Council clarified that the deputy moderator has no appointment powers. So again, it's someone to assist the moderator. This is different than assistant moderators that were used during the pandemic to help the moderator manage the meeting. This is someone who would help run town meeting in the event that the moderator is temporarily unavailable. And we ask your support. Thank you.
The motion is printed in the book, is before you for debate. Mr. Alderson.
Thank you. Jeff Alderson, Precinct 9. Mr. Moderator, a question for you. What is the definition of temporary in this motion?
To the member's question.
Someone that short-term steps in for the moderator. I think it's based on the dictionary. I don't know if you want to ask town council, but it's an interim position. It's someone that temporarily acts for the moderator.
Could the special counsel give us further help in defining what the word temporary means in this instance? Please.
Hi, everybody. The word temporary comes from...
First, before you speak, could I have your name for the record, as well as your address, your residence?
Paul Durensis, and my address is 262 South Main Street in Sherburne.
With regards to someone from speaking from out of town, if town would, I seek out town meetings approval. Does anyone object? No objection. Attorney Durantis, you have the floor.
Your charter used to have the town clerk and it had the word temporary in that section. So it's a word that you've lived with and used already for some time. So rather than trying to invent something new in the wording on this, we use the wording that you were already using.
Thank you. Mr. Alderman? All set?
That answers the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Gorsuth?
Elise Gorseth, Precinct 4. I like the idea of having a deputy moderator, but I would like the idea of having an elected deputy moderator more than an appointed one. I feel like this is a position that should represent the will of the town. And if we're going to be having deputy moderators, I'd like us to be creating a position that would be elected at the same time, perhaps a slate of a moderator and a deputy moderator. So I would not support this. But I would support an alternate motion that would have an elected position.
Mr. Poliandri?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Simone Poliandri, Precinct 6. I have a question for clarification. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Is this a position that will be appointed on an ad hoc basis? So if the moderator were to be, say, absent for any reason, the moderator would appoint the deputy moderator for that particular purpose? Or that's...
To the member's question, could you go to the podium, please? If you're going to answer the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, the question I can clarify. Is this a position that gets created when the need arises? So the moderator, knowing, for example, that will be absent, they would appoint a deputy moderator, and that deputy moderator would remain deputy moderator for the end of the term of the moderator?
Member Griezmer.
Thank you. Paul Griezmer, Precinct 7. The concept behind this is an appointment that would be made that would kind of be a standing appointment, not longer than the elected moderator's term, right? And if the moderator had 2 years left in their 3-year term, they could appoint a deputy for only those 2 years. If the moderator seats became vacant, then there's a different procedure for filling the permanent vacancy or permanent absence of the moderator, and that the termination of the moderator's term, let's say, but through resignation, would cause the existing deputy to go away. You'd have to get a new moderator. The purpose behind it is to have a standing backup so that town meeting doesn't have to go offline and elect a pro tem moderator every time there's a temporary absence.
Okay, yes, in debate.
Yes, sir.
Would it make more sense to have an appointment, say, at the beginning of a year or a certain time, instead of, for example, and I'm sorry to use this example, the moderator were to fall unconscious, and so somebody had to step in, but the deputy moderator, so the moderator could not appoint the deputy moderator. Then how, if there's no deputy moderator in place already, how would that happen?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Actually, I'll use my second question.
You were going in debate, and you
Sure.
stopped for a question. We
Yes.
always ask questions first.
Sure, yeah.
Then you said debate.
Yes,
You're asking.
I take
are
it
you
back,
asking
actually.
rhetorically something?
No, I take it back. I'm using the second question. It's probably better served.
All right, just so
The second-
that everybody understands.
Sure, the second
We
question.
ask. Excuse me. We ask questions first. Then, if you're going to make a motion, you make a motion, or if you're going to debate, you then use that time to debate. You don't go on and debate for three minutes and then ask another question. I'm going to rule that out of order. So that it's clear, I'm going to allow it this time, but we're not going to do it this way, okay? So your question specifically is?
My question specifically is, if there is no deputy moderator appointed at the time that, say, for example, the moderator falls on the ground unconscious. I'm sorry to use this example. and there's no moderator to appoint a deputy moderator, then what happens?
To the member's question. Member Griezmer.
Paul Griezmer, Precinct 7. If there is no deputy moderator and the moderator is temporarily absent, town meeting next needs to, as its very first order of business before doing anything else, elect a moderator pro tem.
To continue in debate or
Now in debate.
All right, we're going to debate at this point.
Okay. I would say that it would probably make more sense than for the moderator to appoint a deputy moderator at the time that the moderator, now if this becomes a rule, and at the time the moderator gets elected, so that we have one in place, rather than seeing whether the moderator is able to appoint a moderator or not at the time that is needed. And that's my point.
Okay. Further debate on the matter? Back of the hall. Gentleman, black jacket, I think? Yeah. Name and precinct, please.
Tian Lum, Precinct 9. In the special report, in the report, the committee's report for this special town meeting, there was a reference to a concern about an heir apparent. And in the discussion after that report, that wasn't really addressed, and I was wondering if the committee had any additional information on that concern.
To the member's question?
The committee had robust discussion with the public about this particular, whether this position should be elected or whether this position should be appointed. And one member of the public felt very strongly that this should not be an appointed position and used the term heir apparent as though a deputy moderator would then become the moderator in subsequent elections. And our committee considered all the different points of view of whether this should be elected by town meeting, whether this position should be elected by the electorate, or whether this should be appointed. And after all of our discussions internally, we felt, again, similar to what we were prepared to present last fall, that this position should be appointed. And it's, again, primarily because town meeting needs to be run efficiently, the deputy moderator would be involved in all the planning that takes place, such that if the deputy moderator needed to step in, they would know who was going to be speaking, what the issues were as it relates to the motions, and that this is somebody that is really just there to assist the moderator and efficiently run the meeting, and is not intended to replace the moderator. So we took into consideration the public's perspective, and we were just sharing this particular person's perspective, but we agreed internally as a committee that we felt this should be an appointed position.
To continue in debate or another question?
Another question, please. Yeah, so could not a elected deputy moderator participate in all the meetings and be informed as much as a appointed moderator would be?
Did everybody get the question? To speak to it? Member Griezmer?
Paul Griezmer, Precinct 7. That's actually one of the things we had a lot of discussion about. So the focus came down to, what's the purpose behind this, is to fill the void of not having the clerk be the standby to step in, and to not have town meeting have to go offline to elect a moderator pro tem, and also to have the backup moderator be ready. So in addition to attending prep meetings, which the moderator schedules, not the deputy moderator, the elected moderator schedules all the prep meetings, the elected moderator handles questions with town council, with the administration, scheduling presenters. One of the things we considered is pro of having an elected moderator or elected deputy is, well, it's a choice. Well, what if they don't get along? Right? What if the deputy moderator and the elected moderator just don't get along, and the moderator doesn't copy the deputy on emails, and the deputy moderator's not prepared? We thought about, what about having town meeting ratify the decision? Well, what if town meeting doesn't ratify the decision? Well, then you don't have a deputy moderator. So it was like we kind of tried to weigh all of the pros and cons of all of this. And what we were really trying to do was keep the focus on making sure that there was cooperation, efficiency, and preparation, which was for the benefit of town meeting and the way it runs, and came down on the side of appointment as probably the best solution to achieve that objective.
Thank you. Last question. So the intent of this language is not to train a subsequent moderator. It's just to fill in when the moderator is not available. Is that correct?
To the member's question.
Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. The answer to that question is yes. I was married to the last elected town clerk. And I've been married for a lot longer than she was town clerk, but I think that she, served as the stand-in moderator 4 times over a 16-year or 15-year term. So it's really kind of just a temporary thing.
Great, thank you.
You know what? Member standing up, young lady. Name and precinct, please.
Hi, I'm Mary Staley, Precinct 8. I have a question through you, Mr. Moderator. Is there any restrictions on who could be appointed in this language or dictated somewhere else? Kind of as an example, could the town clerk be appointed the deputy moderator? Or, are there any restrictions on who could be appointed, and is that captured anywhere?
Fair question. To the member's question. Attorney DeRentis?
There's no restriction in the charter, but I do want to remind people that there's a State Ethics Act. There are restrictions on multiple office holdings and all kinds of things that someone would have to consider as part of the general laws, but there are no restrictions in the charter.
To continue?
Okay, yeah, I kind of was hoping maybe, I guess in debate, that there was some clarification as to who could be appointed. So that's it.
Member Sullivan?
Dan Sullivan, Precinct 8. I'm going to skip my questions and go straight to debate. Rarely am I ever sold and unsold by one speaker in a presentation on an article. I was sold on the need, given an appointed clerk as opposed to an elected one, that we needed to have someone to temporarily stand in case the moderator cannot serve their role. But then the language goes on, and the narrative went on to talk about essentially an appointed moderator's apprentice, if you will, or an assistant who will work with that individual in preparation and help them. It's almost like there's like 2 different roles with this. I would tell you, in the town of Natick and the charter of the town of Natick, and when I make reference to the moderator, I make reference to the role of the moderator, not the individual who serves in that position, that it is one of the most concentrated positions in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with respect to appointing authority. Not only do all 15 members of the Finance Committee get appointed by the moderator, but there are dozens of other positions that are exclusively appointed by the moderator, in addition to the vast majority of committees that this body generally stands. So the other thing that I would say is, if we take a look at the electoral history in the town of Natick, one of the most infrequently turned over positions is that of the moderator. I believe we've had 2 individuals serve in that role in the last 30 plus years. And I think giving someone potentially an unfair or a fair advantage, either way you want to call it, by being appointed as a deputy and serving as an apprentice for a couple of years leading up to a potential election that may come if someone determines to step down, really just further complicates or further concentrates a level of power in the moderator's position in the town of Natick, which is already one of the most concentrated positions. And as a result of that, I would strongly urge that we vote down this motion. Thank you.
Member Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dirk Coburn, Precinct 4. Through you, questions. First question is, how is it envisioned and when is it envisioned, what timing applies to the envisioned appointment of the deputy moderator?
To the member's question. Is that turned off?
Batteries might have gone. I think the battery's gone.
Did you lose a battery, Jim? Why don't you use that and Jim will change the battery in that
Paul
one.
Gracemore, Precinct
Thanks,
7. The special act would need to this provision would need to get through town meeting. It would then need to go to the legislature. It would then need to go to the voters, and then it would become effective, and whoever is the moderator at that time would exercise the appointment power for whatever the balance of their elected term was.
Thank you. Another question, follow-up on that one. Beyond that, for the next moderator who would be elected, what is the envisioned process for the next moderator after our current one to appoint a deputy, assuming this all goes through and is fully in place before the next moderator should become elected?
To the member's question.
Paul Gracemore, Precinct 7. We have another provision in the charter. It's in Article 7 of the charter that requires that any appointed position in the town has to be noticed to the public. I believe it's for 14 days. It has to be posted on like the website and the bulletin board so that anyone can apply, so that all applicants can be considered. So this would not be something that the moderator could do outside of that procedure. There would be a posting, there would be a notice, and also anybody could apply, and all of those postings would be public documents.
Thank you. And third question, with regard to the service, or particularly any qualifications or restrictions on who can be appointed and so forth, is it envisioned or can it be envisioned that could be treated in bylaws?
To the member's question.
Paul Durensis, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. In debate. We've just come through several years where we saw the current moderator step up and do an awful lot of work, an awful lot of hours on our behalf. It is a very responsible position. It's a process position, which limits the application of that power to policy agendas by its nature. But it is a position that does require an awful lot of work to make our form of volunteer citizen government work. And it did because we had a lot of people come forward and be appointed informally to positions that could help. I don't think that, I think it's kind of, a case of, cutting the nose to spite the face, to say somebody might gain expertise in that role and have an advantage. One hopes they would gain expertise and have judgment and be credible in the future. But the point is not about who's going to be elected to what in the future. The point is, this is a position that a thoughtful committee in dialogue with the public has determined is important to make our form of government run. And I think we ought to support it. We can give it a try. It is something that can be amended, and putting some of the questions, for instance, qualifications and restrictions on who can serve, into the bylaws can make it easy to refine this later. I think we ought to support it.
It's been brought to my attention that there's a spelling error on the screen. The word statute is spelled wrong. I want to remind people, you don't vote the motion that's on the screen. You vote the motion that is printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book. It is spelled correctly in the Finance Committee recommendation book. This is only there for reference and to make it a little easier for you folks to deal with. Woman with the vest on, the maroon vest. Name and precinct, please.
Hi, Victoria Grafflin, Precinct 5. I just want to say for debate, I think this makes a lot of sense. It's clear that the role of the moderator is very intense, requires an awful lot of work. I agree that an appointed moderator makes sense. I would say, though, that I do think some kind of guideposts like town meeting approval should be involved.
Let's see. Member Vickers in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brindley Vickers, Precinct 8. To follow on a statement by a previous speaker, I would like clarification about whether or not the bylaws can actually add requirements for the appointment of this deputy, meaning they could have the same requirements of the town moderator, meaning they need to live and reside and be a registered voter in Natick.
To the member's question. Member Weissman.
The bylaws can be written regarding how the deputy moderator could be appointed. That would be a future bylaw.
Second question, understanding the word temporary a little better for myself. Hoping that this never happens, but if the elected moderator needed to be in the hospital, say, for 6 or 7 months, that would seem temporary, but then that means that deputy would be presiding over 2 town meetings, potentially. And what would happen with all of the appointment responsibilities during that time?
I think the answer to your question is in the last line of the motion. But to the member's question? Member Weithman?
The deputy moderator has no appointment powers.
So I'm just trying to ask, what does happen during that period of time for appointments? Do they just sit open?
Ms. North, Attorney North, what would occur if the Finance Committee terms, the 5 that would be expiring, they expire, and the moderator was unable to appoint for, 30, 60 days? What would occur in that instance with the members that are already seated on the Finance Committee?
The appointments would hold over until they were reappointed, until a qualified successor was reappointed.
I believe that answers your question.
Thank you.
Member Scott?
Roger Scott, Precinct 10. Since the moderator is elected by the people of the town and has a powerful position, I would like to make a motion that the deputy, at least so that we can vote on it tonight, that the deputy moderator be also on the ballot for the town to decide versus to have a particular group. So I would like that to be on our ballot and make a motion so we could vote on something like that.
No. I don't have it in writing. I don't have anything appropriately formed. The members have no idea exactly what is going to be written. Without that, no. You want to do that and bring it back and reconsider this later? Sure, you have every right to do that. But no. Mr. Scott, to continue?
I would like to maybe postpone this to another meeting so that it could be written up such to fulfill the requirement of the town meeting, since this just came up tonight and nobody anticipated this debate.
So you want to postpone this to when?
Till the next meeting.
Okay, do you have a pen? You have a piece of paper? There's also a form for this in your book, but you want to write down postpone consideration of motion 2. Under Article 2 until, pick a date. Tuesday, Thursdays are going to run the 2nd, the 7th, the 9th, the 14th, and the 16th. Pick a date.
May 7th.
There you go. I don't think I have to prod for a second, but is there a second to that motion? Mr. Devereaux seconds that motion. Could I have that which you just wrote as a written copy so that I can record it here in my record. Where's the page? Is there a page somewhere around here? Oh, there she is. Could you take that piece of paper that he wrote?
I have to rewrite it so that I could actually have a booklet to write
I
it
need
upon.
every motion in writing.
I will give it to you as soon as I can write it properly that you could read it.
I need every motion in writing before we move forward.
Hold on.
Hold on, let me finish what I'm doing, okay? If you go to page 14 of your book, you can tear that page. I have no microphone. No? You probably won't.
This one just got new batteries. It's already on.
Oh, jeez, look out.
Thank you.
If you go to page 14 of your book, there's a form that was included by the Finance Committee so that you can appropriately file a motion. This is why we do things on the fly. Why I normally ask for motions in advance. Jamie just took it. We'll wait. Mr. Scott has the floor. Hold on. Just motion 2. Thank you, Mr. Scott. On the appropriate form, we have a motion. Postpone Article 2, Motion 2. To May 7th. Would you concur, Mr. Devereaux, that's what you seconded? Where are you? Oh, there you are. You moved. I can't keep track of you if you move around the hall. Okay, that's the motion before you. That's what we're going to debate. Do you want to debate this, Mr. Scott? You have 2 minutes.
My debate is based on, since the moderator himself is elected by the people of the town, that the power of that should not be transferred to someone of his picking to be a deputy moderator, that the town should have the ability to vote.
Sir, the motion that we're debating is the postponement. It's not the fact that this should be an elected versus an appointed position. So would it be simple to say that you want to offer up an amendment to the existing motion to change this from appointed to elected?
Yes, that would be appropriate.
We just summarized the debate. Anything else you want to say about the postponement? Not the matter what would be good or bad or different about elected or appointed.
So
That's for when we get the amendment on the floor. Just the postponement.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Excellent. To speak only to the postponement. Member Ostroff?
Josh Ostroff, Precinct 6. I oppose the postponement, and I asked town meeting members to let's just discuss and debate this tonight. If it is defeated because people don't want what we are presented with, then we can bring something back. But I think that we've had ample time to consider this. Having been a critic of some of the visibility of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee's work in the past, I feel like there have been months of publicly available discussion and debate about this, including the most recent Finance Committee hearings, and this has been abundantly available to members to acquit themselves with the facts. I think that what we've got in front of us is perfectly reasonable to vote on, but if it's the will of town meeting to defeat it, then we can come back. And we also have another bite at the apple in the fall, since this would not be before the legislature until calendar 2025. I would ask us to vote no on postponement, and let's resolve this. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Further debate on the postponement? Seeing none, we'll vote this. How's that knee holding up? Keep it elevated now. It's a majority vote. Vote on the postponement. That is just this Article 2 until May 7. Excuse me, this motion 2. Excuse me. You want your microphone? Want this one back? Yeah. It's the magical mic. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote under postponement is we need music. I can hear it in my head. 22 yes, 97 no, 3 abstain. The motion to postpone fails. We now go back to the main motion, motion 2. I'll take Mr. Ostroff first.
Still Josh Ostroff, still Precinct 6, through you, Mr. Moderator, although people can move around within the town. To educate town meeting, are we boldly going where no town has gone before? That is, are there other communities with a similar position? Perhaps through you, we could be educated on that, and then I have a follow-up.
I can say from my cohorts, fellow moderators, that many of them have deputy town moderators. Any further explanation? I think that will give you a sense.
Thank you.
Sir.
Another question is, let's say that this were to take effect and in 2028 we realize, oh no, we've made a terrible mistake, we want to change this. Does it need to go through a special act, or could we amend the charter as we have done in the past by passing it at 2/3 vote of town meeting and then bringing it to a subsequent town election, just to undo that mistake if we make one?
Member Weissman.
This could be done in the more traditional manner that we have done town meeting warrant article and vote to the electorate. Does not need a special act.
Thank you to the member. And in debate, Mr. Moderator, I was on the fence about this because I share some concerns about concentration of power. But we also, with our moderator, have an enormous concentration of responsibility. Aside from the chair of the Finance Committee, there's probably no position in town of whom more is expected for less reward, other than the joy of serving the public. So I think that in particular, as we consider the potential for hybrid town meeting, or it's wonderful to see so many new members here, but with the churn that we experience, there's a lot of education that goes along with the administration of town meeting. So I feel inclined to support this change, because I think that having an assistant is important. The moderator's appointing skill is on the ballot when he or she is considered by the voters. The composition of Finance Committee, of course, other committee appointments that he or she may make, and certainly this one as well. So I think that is one of the criteria that voters need to consider and candidate for moderator, future moderator in this case. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
I have 4 people standing up, one for a second time. Fellow in I guess it's either black or blue jacket, the rear of the hall.
Thank you, Monitor. For debate.
And name and precinct, please.
Greg Richard, Precinct 8. I also agree that the moderator position is extremely important and very powerful. I would be much more comfortable if this was a voted position rather than an appointed position.
Very good. Member Gath, down front here. Somebody's getting her exercise. Thank you very much.
Bill Gath, Precinct 6. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to ask a couple of clarification questions and then enter the debate. The first clarification question is, how much is the moderator paid?
Nothing.
Second clarification question, how much is this deputy moderator going to be paid?
Twice as much as nothing.
Sounds like many of the positions we all hold. I've been a town meeting member for a little over 45 years. In all that time, I think there have been 3 moderators. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen anybody rushing to join that position over these years.
It's true.
You talk about making the deputy moderator position elected. That's one of the reasons you would not want it elected. You couldn't get anybody to fill it half the time. The other question is, it's important that it be somebody that can work with the existing moderator, that can work hand in hand with him and learn what's going on. It's also very important that that person be ready to step in at any moment. Nobody knows what's going to happen to any of us. Some of us are kind of old. So I would strongly urge that you support this motion, as it is the best way to handle the continuity of town meeting in the future of our town. Thank you.
Gentleman in the hallway or the walkway in the rear. Mr. Grady.
Alan Grady, Precinct 3. I ask to move this question.
I only seeing one person rising from their seat. We will, no need to take the motion to debate. Debate is closed. We'll vote this at this time. Point of order? Mr. Coburn? No, move the question down. Yeah.
Point of order is, are we voting on moving the question,
Nope.
or are we voting on the question?
I assume, well, when I said there's only one person, the people sat down. And I interpret that as in to say, there's nobody standing anymore. So if somebody moves a question and there is one person who has not spoken once before. Have you spoken on the article? Yes, you have. Okay, so no one who has, is there anyone else that wants to speak to this who has not spoken before? Because if there is, we do need to vote moving the question. That was correct. There is nobody.
I just asked for
So
clarification.
I'm just trying to clear so everybody understands why I didn't take it. I want to explain it. So therefore, maybe I went too fast, which is very possible because I do that. We are voting the actual motion at this time. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Motion 2, page 201. We are voting at this time. Voting is closed. Is that everybody? I lost my pen. I have spares. There we go. Tally of the vote is? Oh, there it is. 87 yes. 31 no, 1 abstain. Motion prevails by a majority vote. Motion 3. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation under Motion 3?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 3, as printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book on pages 203 and 204, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as it appears on page 203 and 204. Member Weithman? Motion 3.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christine Weithman, Precinct 5. Motion 3 deals with the charter provision concerning the removal and suspension of the town manager. This is essentially the same motion from last fall that was Amendment K. During preparation for fall annual town meeting, subcommittee of CBRC and the Select Board worked through this language, and subsequent to fall town meeting, when this was referred back to the CBRC worked closely with the Select Board to have everybody in agreement about the language regarding changes that are being proposed under the charter. So in the current charter, the quantum of vote to remove a town manager is a 2/3 threshold. Currently, because we have a 5-person Select Board, to remove the town for removal or suspension, that becomes 4/5. But there's an additional provision in the current charter that indicates that all Select Board members must be present to actually have that vote take place. So it essentially gives one Select Board member veto power over whether this vote could even take place by not even being in the room. So again, in working with the Select Board, we're moving this to a simple majority vote, and we're We have notice given to the select board such that they know this vote is going to take place, so that there's no longer an absolute requirement that all select board members be present. There's an additional, if you can scroll down. There's an additional section F, which has been added at the recommendation of both special counsel and town council. And this provision is really to help protect the town against litigation. So in the event that the select board might not actually conduct a performance review of an existing town manager, in the event that person was removed or suspended, this provision protects the town against future litigation. So again, we're looking to simplify the process and have the town manager be removed or suspended for that same simple majority as hiring, and then also adding protective provisions to the town to protect against litigation in the event an unhappy employee decided to sue the town because they were removed from the position.
Debate on motion 3. Member Walschlager?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Linda Walschlager, Precinct 7, member of the Select Board and former member of the Finance Committee. When this came up in the fall under Amendment K, I opposed the section that's in subsection F on page 205. And specifically, the part that I was uncomfortable with was the failure of the select board to conduct a performance review of the town manager, not creating an impediment. And now, as a member of the select board, I feel even more strongly about this. I do not believe that the select board should be let off the hook. If the select board does not do their job and conduct a performance review, I don't feel that that's fair to potentially remove a town administrator, particularly now when the vote is only 2/3, is only a majority instead of 4 out of 5. I think it's an equity issue. I think in the private sector, it would be a gross failure of someone not to conduct a performance review, and I'm uncomfortable having that codified in our charter that says, select board, doesn't matter if you do your job. We don't have to, the town won't be liable. So I am uncomfortable with this. I don't think it's fair. I understand why it was added for legal provisions, but I don't think that our charter should necessarily only be a statement of ways to prevent a lawsuit. I think it should also state our values, and I think our values should be that our select board should be required to conduct a performance review. So for that reason, I am not in support of this article. Thank you.
Further debate under motion 3. Member Gath?
Bill Gath, Precinct 6. I try and look at things simply in my mind on these discussions. And in the first part on this one, we're talking about having a simple majority under the old rules be able to remove a town manager. I know it said 2/3, but that's a simple majority. And what they're saying is they want to change it on this new one, since it's a 5-member board, to also be a simple majority. I can't see a problem with that. Now, to go way off the deep end on this section F. So we're saying here, if our illustrious town administrator or town manager is an axe murderer we cannot remove him until he has a performance review by the select board, and we got to pray that he doesn't bring an axe to the review. Is that what we're saying? I don't know. I just don't understand this.
I'm not.
For the record, no. Member Griesmer.
Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I've been in a couple of meetings with the town administrator, and I don't think he's ever been armed. So, I want to speak to the motion F part of this. It was not something that was the brainchild of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. It was something that was strongly recommended by special counsel. Special counsel developed the wording. And then town council, in reviewing the motion before it coming to town meeting, said, no, you need to make it even stronger than the way special counsel worded it. Here's why. We have a provision elsewhere in the charter that's in Article 4 of the charter that says that the select board shall annually do a review of the town administrator or of the town manager. It's annually. If they foot fault that by a week, that's not annual. If they foot fault it by a month, right, that's not annual. So if the contract runs from June through May, and the review didn't happen until July, well, they missed it inside of that year. The benefit of having worked with special counsel, and also what we were told by town council, is those types of little errors, those like little omissions or delays, have been successfully used by bad town administrators, not the current company, to sue to get their jobs back, to sue for full reinstatement of the job, to sue for damages. We also have to remember that that provision that's earlier in the charter says that the review of the town administrator needs to be public. The public sector doesn't do that. But we do that the private sector doesn't do that. In the public sector, well, that happens for the top job. That makes people a little hesitant to give somebody a bad grade. And there's you get a mediocre or average review, that's really kind of like sending a message, as opposed sometimes people are just reluctant as volunteers on a select board, a volunteer board that's turning over. So people are hesitant about what they would say in something that is going to be public. They may say other things more privately. And the purpose behind F is to not have a delay, to not have a hesitation in the way that a review is worded be an impediment to the town taking an action. Further, you could do a review on time. A volunteer board of the select board could do a review on time and not be aware of something that went on. Let's say somebody was harassed behind the scenes, and you don't find out until next year, and you want to get rid of them. Well, you gave them a good review for the year in which they did it. You don't want that to be an impediment to being able to do things in order to be able to protect the town. That we were strongly advised on the initial wording, and then town council actually even made it stronger, that says this is the language that you really need in order to protect the town, given the context of it's a public review, it's done by a volunteer board, people get busy as volunteers, and if they miss the timing, then you could be stuck with a bad manager for the duration of the contract. So that's the whole kind of thought process behind F. It's not designed to be unfair to anybody. It's designed to prevent somebody from being unfair to the town. Thank you.
Further debate. Member Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, a question for the committee. In the first paragraph, section 4.4, removal, at one time it required the full board to take that action. And now it evidently is just a quorum. So I was curious as to, somebody could explain why the full board was deleted and now it's a majority of who shows up.
To the member's question, Member Griesmer.
Thank you, Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. The current language in the charter requires every member of the select board to be there for a disciplinary action of removal or suspension. If one of the members isn't there, they can't do anything. So if it was one member, if you had 4 members of a select board that said, we need to get rid of this manager, and one member of the select board who said, no, I want to keep them, that one member doesn't show up at the meeting can't occur. What we've proposed doing is changing it from everybody on the select board absolutely has to be physically present in the meeting, that everybody gets adequate notice and the opportunity to be present, and then a quorum can act. So that everybody's got notice, etc. And it can only, any vote can only happen after all of the conditions of paragraph B that's on the screen have been satisfied. If you don't have one of those conditions, you can't act, even if you had everybody present. So, but that's the reason we changed it to an opportunity to be present with notice versus you actually had to be present.
Thank you. To continue?
No, that explains it perfectly, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Very good. Member Colburn?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Straight to debate. I am generally in favor of language that protects the interests and the public funds of the town. That said, if this subsection F here, if this clause F were the only thing that dealt with performance reviews in the whole charter, I might concur with the idea that it doesn't quite express our values. It is not, however, as has been noted elsewhere in debate. And there is clear language mandating appropriate and constructive and admirable practices with regard to reviewing our employees. And so the totality certainly supports our values, and this protects our interests. I think we should vote it.
Member Miller, over on the other side of the hall.
Terry Miller, Precinct 9. I'd like to make a motion to move the question.
I see 2 people seeking the floor. We'll put the motion to close debate, that is, move the question to a vote. Second by Member Foss. Thank you. Please vote on whether you wish to close debate. Two-thirds vote. Yes. Funny person. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 108 yes, 10 no, 0 abstain. Passes by a majority vote. Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Moderator.
Yeah, I was thinking the motion. You are correct. The clerk was correcting me too. Passed by a 2/3 vote. My error. Thank you. We'll now vote. Motion 3. Please vote now. Voting is closed. Tally of the voters, 105 yes, 10 no, 2 abstain. That passes by a majority vote. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation under motion 4?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 4, as printed on pages 206 through 214 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. The entire motion that appears on pages 206 through 214 of the Finance Committee recommendation book. Member Weissman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And town meeting members, apologize on my slide that I had a typo. In terms of motion 4, this is about the powers and duties of the select board. And this takes up so many pages in your Finance Committee book because this is a very long section. It's a little bit easier, I think, if you start on page 214 to see the red line. And one of the goals of the special act is to change the town administrator to town manager. We essentially have a town manager with the types of responsibilities that we've already empowered him with, but in this particular motion, in this particular section of the charter, we're literally taking all the words for town administrator out and town manager. We're also fixing all the gender issues. So anytime he is referenced, we've removed that and changed the language. So there's quite a bit of text changes in this that go all the way to page, to page 221 in terms of the red line, but most of that is language, again, to fix the town manager and to fix the gender issues. There are a couple of important places where we have made changes. So under section 4, we're making the personnel board, the personnel board is advisory. So last fall town meeting, we passed a bylaw regarding that, but the charter needs to match that, and the charter is the primary document. So again, in this section, we're reinforcing the bylaw that was changed last fall and making the personnel board advisory. Then if you flip to page 216, under section 12, the inventory practices, we're changing that to remove generally accounting principles, GAAP principles, and having the town manager responsible for inventory except for minor things which we're terming immaterial or de minimis. And then there are two other important changes that came up as a result of communications with the Select Board and with the Finance Committee last fall, and that has to do with the acting town manager. So this is section 4.3, which is on page 217. And so the acting town manager can only, the Select Board can appoint the acting town manager currently for a 3-month term. And what came out in the discussion with Finance Committee last fall is that when you're going to have when you have an opportunity to appoint a new town manager, we have a whole selection process. And so you need to convene a selection committee and then do all the work. You might need additional time to be able to appoint an acting town manager so that you have plenty of time to select your next candidate. So with the coordination with the Select Board would like up to a year to be able to appoint acting town managers. So we added language such that the Select Board could appoint an acting town manager for a 3-month term and then up to 3 additional terms. So it really gives the Select Board that full year to be able to identify a new candidate and have somebody on board. And then the last provision in this is that the acting town manager has no formal appointment powers. So if you had a really important position like the comptroller or the treasurer collector, comptroller is not the right one, but treasurer collector or your head of DPW who resigned when you had an acting town manager, that important position could only be appointed as a temporary appointed position. So what we have added language such that with the Select Board's approval, an acting town manager could appoint a permanent position. Again, then the Select Board would give affirmative approval. So it protects the town and makes sure that you're going to be able to hire the best candidate to replace a really important position, and you have your elected Select Board kind of supervising and making sure that the acting town manager selects the right person. So again, the Select Board is empowering the acting town manager with their approval to replace a really important position. So, and then the rest of the language, which continues on 218 and 219, those are just red lines of other town manager or gender changes.
Thank you. The motion 4 is to the floor for debate by you folks. Member Ostroff.
Josh Ostroff, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, last fall, I provided some, when some other, I don't think this particular one, amendments to the charter were in front of the body. I offered some amendments to those amendments, which subsequently led to us referring the matters back and then taking them up at this special town meeting. And I just wanted to take a moment to explain why and to commend the process since then. We had a number of residents of the town had some concerns about the opportunity for review and debate, and that was abundantly addressed in over the winter and ensuing months by the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. And I very much appreciate the opportunities to do so. I think that we have much improved language as a result. I did not then and do not now have concerns about this specific section of the charter, but other ones. But I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that while it may have been an inconvenience to the body to not dispose of everything at the time that we had the opportunity in October and November, I think we have a much better work product to consider now. And I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Further debate on the right-hand side. Member?
Hi, Emily Warmington, Precinct 7. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering if we can get an explanation for why the generally accepted accounting principles were removed from Section 13.
To the member's question. Member Griesmer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. Generally accepted accounting principles is a large body of formal accounting literature that people become experts in when they get a PhD in accounting, or they pass the CPA exam. And there are all sorts of generally accepted accounting rules about how one keeps an inventory of fixed assets, depreciates them, allocates acquisition costs, how one keeps an inventory of personal property, how one depreciates all of that. And we thought that the town manager should keep track of the property of the town and not get a night job in counting ledgers, and actually not have to comply with all of the rules that are inside of generally accepted accounting principles.
To continue?
Yeah, further question. If we're audited, so I assume that we are, does this section imply that the town administrator or town manager themselves is actually keeping this inventory? Because it seems to say that it's shall assure that a full inventory is kept. And then furthermore, are we not already following GAAP for those financials?
To the member's question.
Again, Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. The comptroller appointed by the select board would be responsible for maintaining those accounting records, as opposed to the town administrator as the chief operating officer of the town. That's a distinction.
So as clarification, this is not in any way exempting or changing the way that we do our accounting of assets. It's just taking it out of this section.
Mr. Griever.
To just further complete the answer, no, it doesn't change the way we do the accounting. It just makes clear that the town manager is not the one who has to be responsible for doing it.
Great, thank you. Nothing further.
Very good. Further debate under the motion before you? Seeing none, we will vote. Motion 4. Please vote motion floor 4 at this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is? $111 yes, 3 no, 1 abstain. Passes by a majority vote. Mr. Jacobs, further recommendation under Article 2.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 5, as printed on pages 222 and 223 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. The text as it appears in your Finance Committee recommendation books, page 222 and 223. Member Weithman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christine Whiteman, Precinct 5. Motion 5 deals with the organization of town agencies, and this is what was formerly Amendment N in the fall. The original text for this motion last fall, the CBRC was trying to work with administration and the select board to help come up with minor reorganization. And with a lot of work since the referral from, over the winter, all of the parties, we couldn't come up with the language that we wanted to help define what minor reorganization was. So that paragraph was removed. So the goal here of this particular motion is really to just clarify that the charter and bylaws take precedence over changes. So the town manager can reorganize by bylaw, or they can organize by administrative code. And we're just trying to make clear that the charter and bylaws take precedence in terms of any organization or reorganization that might take place within the town administration. So it's much simpler.
Debate on motion 5. Seeing none, we will vote this at this time. You may vote on motion 5. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 111 yes, 3 no, 0 abstain. Motion 6. Mr. Jacobs, Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 6, as printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book on page 225, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. Motion as it appears on page 225. Ms. Whiteman.
Thank you. Christine Whiteman, Precinct 5. The goal of motion 6 is to remove the job descriptions of the treasurer collector, the treasurer, the assistant treasurer, the comptroller, and the assistant comptroller. Remove all that language about how those positions should be organized and hired, and move to a bylaw, which would be a subsequent work of the committee. And so we're essentially removing large sections of the charter, section 6.3, 6.4, and we've added the town clerk section 6.5. And so there's a transition provision that will be in the special act, such that all of these all of the wording in this charter would be in effect until the bylaws are passed by town meeting. So this is really, these are extremely important positions in the town, and they should really be managed by the town manager and the select board in terms of credentials and how those positions work. And it shouldn't take a charter change for us to have to update those job descriptions. And so it's really a simple cleanup right now is what we're proposing in this motion.
Thank you. On motion 6. Mr. Linehan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Linehan, Precinct 6. It's a process question. Draw your attention to page 226 of the booklet. Actually, 225 at the bottom, and says in black and white, additions are underlined, deletions are struck through. And then there's, on page 226, there's a bunch of strike-throughs, but then some of the gray matter is not struck through. And is that the intent of what, I'm a little confused as far as what it is that we're looking at, because it deletes section 6.3. It appears to delete section 6.3, but there's still lettering in 6.3 that's not struck through in the booklet. And is the intent that that should have been struck through?
Okay.
That's my only comment. That's a question. Yeah, but that's a question.
Yeah. Mr. Gillenwater, to the member's question.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, also consulting with the town council, it should all be struck through. I'm not sure why the font is off on that, but that whole section should be struck through.
I just want to make...
Can I also mention something in addition to that?
Yes, sir.
Notice that the motion only appears on 225. Everything else is an illustration for you. So it's all narrative. So whether it's struck through or not does not affect the motion in which you're going to pass or fail.
Okay. Thank you.
Further debate under motion 6. Seeing none, we will vote that at this time. Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is 107 yes, 4 no, 1 abstain. Mr. Jacobs. Further recommendation? Looks like motion 7.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 7, as printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book on pages 231 through 233, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as appears on page 231, 232, and most of 233. To speak to the matter.
Thank you,
Member
Christine. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christine Whiteman, Precinct 5. Motion 7 is the former Amendment P from last fall, and what the CBRC is doing is just creating a consolidated place under Article 6, where the administrative organization and where the select board appointments would all appear. And we worked with the select board and the administration, on the wording for these charter changes. And the select board voted 5-0-0 to support this amendment in their meeting on April 17th.
Debate under motion 7. Seeing none. We'll vote this at this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 104 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Next order of business is motion 8. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 8, as printed on page 237 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
To speak to the matter, Member Weithman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Motion 8 is clarifying throughout the entire charter that the charter will now be gender neutral. And this is actually this is pretty much an expectation of the legislature that any charters that come before them will be gender neutral. So although we've made a lot of edits in some of the different sections, removing he and they, this universally changes the charter in the event we missed any language, just to reflect that the charter will be gender neutral.
Debate on the motion before you. Seeing none, we'll vote this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 109 yes, 3 no, no abstain. Passes by majority vote. Motion 9, Mr. Jacobs.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 9, as printed on page 239 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. Ms. Whiteman to speak to the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This motion is for Section 7-10 of the Charter in terms of vacancies. And so what we're trying to do with language here is make sure that appointed positions, the public is notified so that individuals have the opportunity to apply for openings when a term has expired. Another change, though, from the fall is that, and you'll notice this, Town Council wanted the language to be organized, so we have Section A, Section B, and Section C. So essentially, the language is the same as last fall, but it's written in 3 different sections so that it's very clear. And then lastly, it's important, we have made the change so that compensated positions, if someone has a contract and that contract is set to expire, compensated positions do not have to be posted. So, it reassures our important employees that, when their contract is up, they can renegotiate a contract and we don't have to automatically post their position and say, we're looking for new people. So this notice of vacancies really is just for the appointed positions, and it protects our employees, from not having to post their jobs when their contract is up.
Excellent. Debate on the matter? Yes.
Beverly Rich, Precinct 10, minor typo in paragraph B, the end of the 3rd line, there's a hanging A. It should be compensated positions, not A compensated positions.
Is that what was intended here? Because it is for multiple compensated positions. Okay, good catch. For grammatical purposes, Scrivener's error, we will, without objection, we'll delete the word A in the 3rd line of paragraph B at the end of the line. Good catch. Yeah, so it should read, the above requirements do not apply to the expiration of appointments for compensated positions where a vacancy does not exist or is not anticipated. Is that correct?
In paragraph C.
Oh, excuse me, paragraph C. I'm reading this as, it's indented incorrectly. I'm reading this as one paragraph. First line of paragraph C, actually, is where this appears. My mistake. That being said, you have a motion before you, Mr. Palandri. Palandri? Yeah?
Simone Poliandri, Precinct 6. Just a quick question for clarification under paragraph A, line 1, 2, 3, 4, line 8. It's line 7. It says no permanent appointment to fill a position shall be effective until at least 14 days have elapsed following such posting. Does that mean 14 calendar days?
Ms. North, there's always been something said about the number of days and whether it's business or calendar. Can you
Yes.
explain that, please?
In section 7, I believe, of the charter, it defines if something is less than 7 days, it's weekdays, otherwise it's calendar days.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you.
Good question. Further debate under this motion as we've modified it? Seeing none, we'll vote this at this time. Please vote on this matter now. Tally of the vote is 111 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain. Next order of business. Mr. Jacobs, further recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 10, as printed on page 241 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Motion 10. Ms. Weithman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, Motion 10 is formally Amendment J, the powers and duties of the Select Board. And the committee had quite a bit of discussion with members of the public, former members of the Select Board, around a paragraph that was quite concerning to a number of those members. And in the end, we all agreed to delete that paragraph. So the current change for Motion 10 we think is an important one, and it's to clarify that the Select Board is a town agency. And there's been history where, because of the language that currently is in the charter, some Select Board members historically did not feel they were a town agency, but they in fact are, and so we're just reinforcing it with this charter change.
Thank you. Under Motion 10, debate? Seeing none. We'll vote this at this time. Tally of the vote is 104 yes, 2 no, 0 abstain. Mr. Jacobs, under motion 11, recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 11, as printed on pages 243 and a little bit on page 244 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Ms. Whitelam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Motion 11 is formally Amendment I, and it's about the appointment and performance review of the town manager. And this particular change to the charter gives the select board the opportunity to have a contract with the town manager for up to 3 years with a majority vote of the select board, or up to 5 years with a 2/3 vote of the select board. So it allows the select board to reward a strong town manager with a longer-term contract. It also gives the select board flexibility with the term up to 3 years. Let's say your town manager is ready to retire in 2 years and their contract is up. It allows the select board to negotiate a 2-year contract with that town manager and then have plenty of time for planning for a replacement town manager. So the select board voted on their April 17th meeting to support this 500, and again, we worked the language out with the select board. In addition, we made changes from the previous motions that were presented in the fall, that would have been presented in the fall, and clarified the language of the performance review such that it is the select board that is responsible, simplified the language just such that the select board is responsible for the performance, for the review of the job performance of the town manager.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Motion 11, in debate.
Martin Kessel, Precinct 10. I think I'm missing something. There seems to, let me ask it as a question. Is there a duplication with page 231, which is the revised section 3.2, which also talks about the appointment of the town manager? Or do those address different aspects?
To the member's question, page 243.
Now we're on 243, and it talks about a majority for 3 years and a
I can't hear you.
majority for 5 years.
when-
But that's also addressed on page 231, which is the revised section 3.2, 3-2.
And the other page was 231.
Yes.
Do you see what the member is saying? Member Griesmer? Right to the podium, please.
Thank you, Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. If I understand the question, page 231 is a prior motion 7 that we voted.
Correct.
And this is a current motion. Yes. So the charter currently, in its current form, not in its proposed amendment form, has language in it in 2 places dealing with the appointment of the town administrator. But we want to change that to be town manager. And so it's actually the appointment of the town administrator is specified in Article 3, and there's literally the same language in Article 4 of the current charter. We thought about saying, well, let's leave it in one place. But then we also thought about, well, let's make the change the same way in both places, because we didn't want to have anybody think that we were taking out the ability to appoint the town manager. So we've already got it in 2 places, and motion 7 changed it in 1 place. This motion makes the exact same change in Article 4 in the other place. So we already have twins, we're just making the twins the same.
Okay, a good explanation. Thank you.
Very good. Twins, okay. On the motion before you, Member Rich?
Beverly Rich, Precinct 10. I didn't catch this in motion 7 until after we were already voting, but I have a question that also pertains to that. When the language that's specifying 2/3 vote of the select board, previously in a prior motion there was a concern that then one member of the select board could basically throw that vote off by not appearing. Was there any concern about that in this motion?
To the member's question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. So as I understand the question, it's around the 2/3. When we were dealing with the removal, the current charter says it has to be a 2/3 vote with 100% attendance. And what we changed the 100% attendance to 100% notice and the opportunity to attend. But we changed the removal to be a simple majority. This is slightly different. What this is saying is it's always been a simple majority to appoint. That other motion made it a simple majority to remove. This says make it a super majority to give an even longer term than a 3-year term. The research in the town is we're not aware, going back all the way back into like the 80s, of a town manager or town administrator contract that's ever been longer than 3 years. They're just 3. We've been advised by special counsel that if you ever make a mistake with a town manager, you hire the wrong person, 99% of the time or 90% of the communities deal with that problem with living with the contract until it expires and they just don't renew the person. So having a 3-year contract is one level of a commitment. Going beyond that all the way to a 5 is a very important step. And we said you can take the extra step if you've got an exceptional candidate, but let's up the quantum of vote because you are taking that extra step.
Thank you.
Further debate on the matter before you? Seeing none. We'll vote this at this time. Please vote now. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote. There we go. 99 yes, 3 no, 1 abstain. Mr. Jacobs, further recommendation under Article, actually motion 12 under Article 2.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 2, Motion 12, as printed on page 247 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Griesmer. Gillenwater, Ms. Whiteman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The committee is looking to like to adjust the definition of local newspaper. And as you can all imagine, there are fewer and fewer local newspapers. We had quite a bit of discussion with the public on this definition. And certainly, we all know how hard it is to keep up with technology. So what we did is expand the opportunities for current communication, such as the town website and temporary signage. But we created an opportunity to have the select board be the agency that would continue to help define a local newspaper, such that as technology changes or as new opportunities for communicating with the public become available, the select board would hold a public hearing and get input from the public, and that would allow them to expand the types of communication that would be used to communicate things to the town that might expand beyond social media or, the temporary signage that we see around town. So what we're trying to do is take advantage of the current assets that we have in the town to communicate, but also create an opportunity where we don't have to have a charter change because technology changes. And by having the select board hold the public hearing, they are the ones that are capable of helping to further define what would be general communications to the public. And there's language in here for reasonableness, so that there's always going to be more than one type of communication that will go beyond a local newspaper. And there are times when Mass General law requires that certain postings be in a newspaper, and this charter change does not change any of that. And the select board did vote 5-0-0 to support this in their April 17th meeting.
To debate the matter, Member Sidney.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Sidney, Precinct 8, and a member of your Select Board. At the Mass Municipal Association conference this last January, there was a seminar where they were discussing their legislative agendas. One of their legislative agendas is to have the legislature also do some work around defining notice requirements. They are going to be reviewing the definition of local newspaper as well. This change nicely dovetails with what they're talking about doing, and also opens it up. I urge support for this.
Further debate on the matter? Motion 12. No one else standing? Mr. Linehan. You want to know why I ask if there's anybody else standing? So how do I recognize people to speak? Do I need to say any more?
No. And this is the last motion, so. Mike Monahan, Precinct 6. Just a question. From time to time, by the Select Board at a public hearing, is the implication of this that the Select Board has to make an explicit agenda-listed item defining what is considered that basket of communication means sufficient, reasonably capable of reaching and informing the citizens, and that specific basket of means stays the same until another formal agenda item by the Select Board, maybe 5 years later, because time to time could be 5 years later. I'm just wondering, I just want to ensure that the Select Board that this makes the Select Board formally define all the methodologies that are going to be used to communicate. Is that a reasonable assumption, Mr. Moderator?
To the member's question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Griesmer, Precinct 7. Short answer is yes. So they will define the specific methods of communication that are reasonably capable. They've got to make that as a good faith judgment and a good faith determination only after a public hearing, but they can revise it at a later public hearing.
Okay, but it cannot be revised except by another public hearing. No additions, no subtractions at least.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further debate under motion 12? Seeing none? We'll vote this. Please vote now. Tally of the vote is? One oh three yes, 0 no, 0 abstain. Passes unanimously. Are there any other motions under this article, Article 2? Last call. Are there any other motions under Article 2? No motions under Article. Mr. Sidney, for purposes, seek the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Sidney, Precinct 8, and a member of your Select Board. I move we dissolve Special Town Meeting number 1.
So I think that's seconded by just about everybody. I'll write it down. Mr. Ostroff happened to be standing, so. Should I make you vote it electronically? All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? It is unanimous. We have dissolved Special Town Meeting number 1. Yeah, very good. Good work.